Oh, I'm not sure what happened there, but I guess we're back again. Once again, hi to everyone. Please let me know in the chat if there's any problems with the audio, both my voice and the music. So I didn't really paint much after we finished up yesterday. The only thing that I did is I just painted some little scratches on this shoulder pad, and then I just started painting the sword here and here as well. And other than that, we just I just left everything the way it was at the end of the last stream. So I'm just gonna finish up painting these parts for the sword, and then I'm thinking I'll start painting the silver metal parts, just so like I don't want to continue painting gold parts on stream right now, because it just like I'll be doing the same thing over and over again, and if you already seen me do the gold parts, and the silver parts will be a little bit different, so I thought it would be a little bit more interesting to paint those, since it's a little bit different. So for the silver parts, I'm going to need some black paint. I have some on my wet palette, but I add some fresh paint there. I'm gonna add some black paint. I'm using all the same paints from yesterday. So I'm gonna use some black paint, some gray, and then actually that's okay. Just gonna use black and gray for now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to add some white paint as well for the final highlights. For the white, I'm using just where is it? Just this white paint. So we already have the base coat, I think, on all of the parts. Thinking I'll start painting with these tubes here, and then we'll move down the miniature towards his metal leg. Just 1 second, gonna move the mic a little bit. There we go, that should be better. Going to mix up dark gray right here. I'm going for something a little bit brighter than the base coat. Thank you. Please don't crash. I'd prefer if you listen and drive and not watch and drive. Oh yeah, I was gonna start with these guys. So I'm thinking we're gonna do the highlights. We're gonna do bouncing highlights, so instead of just having one highlight in the middle, I'll have multiple ones. So I'll have 3. I'll have the most intense one somewhere around here. And then a smaller one right here, and then another smaller one somewhere around there. Just a second, because the lights are right in my face. Move them a little bit. There you go. Let me know if it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit too bright. Is that better? Should be better. Yes, I'm not gonna worry about the transitions being very smooth, because these parts are really small. You're not gonna notice it. So I'm just gonna sketch them up first, and then I'll see if the transitions are too harsh. So I'll just keep adding this gray to my previous mix, making it brighter and brighter. And with each step, I'm just painting a smaller and smaller area. And then this highlight right here will be the brightest one. So at a certain point, I'll stop going up in value for these highlights on the side, and then I'll do like 1 or 2 extra steps for this one. Hello for everyone who's watching, for everyone who's in the chat. I appreciate you guys joining in, watching. Just gonna blend the transition a little bit because it's a little bit too bright. I'll make more adjustments later after I'm done with sketching. I'm gonna use just the gray color, so this paint right here. Gonna use just that one without mixing it with anything else for the next step. This will be the final highlight for these guys on the sides. And then for the big highlight in the middle, I'll do another step in value. Like that. And then I'm gonna add some white to the gray color. I would say it's about 50-50 gray and white. And then I'm gonna do the final highlight for this middle part. Like that. And now I'm just gonna paint the edge highlights just to see what it looks like, because without the edge highlights it just looks kind of weird. It doesn't look like non-metallic metal at all. So like I was saying yesterday in the previous stream, your non-metallic metal will not look like non-metallic metal until you do the edge highlights. So from time to time you might want to paint them up just to see what it looks like and then make any changes. Then paint them up again and go from there. I'm glad you got home safe, man. Eat some food and hop back in. I'll be here for a while. Not going anywhere anytime soon. So take your time. Oh, sorry. Smooth it out of the frame for a second there. Just concentrated on painting these edge highlights as sharp as possible, so I might not be talking a lot at the moment. Something like that. I'm gonna do the same thing on this one as well, just to see the whole picture. They're right next to each other and it's a little bit hard to tell if it looks good or not, unless I do both of them. Sorry, whenever it moves out of the frame, it's because I'm trying to hold the miniature closer to my face and like I don't even realize that I'm moving it. So I apologize for that. We're almost done with the edge highlights. Just gonna highlight them on the sides as well. Right there. And then on the inside too. Same thing on that one. I'm gonna do the mix of white and gray again. Probably about again probably 50-50 white and gray. I don't want it to be too bright. And I'm gonna edge highlight spots where I have the bouncing light highlights. So here, here, And then another one right here. Same thing on that one. Here, in the middle, and then at the bottom. And then on the inside as well. Right there. The middle. Bottom. There. And right here. For this one I'll also do it here as well. So I'm just gonna put it closer to the camera so you can see what it looks like. Come on. It's too close, I guess. Something like that. I think I'm gonna make shadows a little bit darker because I feel like it's not enough contrast. So I'm gonna add some black to the gray color that I use for the base coat. And I'm gonna glaze it into the shadows. So the darkest shadows I have here at the bottom, and then in between these two highlights. So I have highlight here and then highlight here. So then there's a shadow in the middle. Same here, same thing here. I have one highlight right here and then one highlight here. And then the shadow goes in the middle right there. And then there'll be one shadow right here. An identical thing for this side. Shadow in the middle. Shadow in the middle. And then one at the bottom. It's a very tiny area with a lot of different well, that the ships are not different, but it's just a lot of elements, and it's very hard to, you know, find room for the highlights and the edge highlights and the shadows. It's very busy, so I'm not gonna spend too much time there because that area is hard to read regardless of how hard I try. So now for the metal, we're gonna do something different than what I did for the gold. I'm gonna use blue ink and red ink, and I'm gonna glaze it over the metal to add some interest and kind of make it look like reflections in the metal. So instead of it just being you know, black and gray and white, it'll have some blue and red tones. Because if you look at reflective metal, or just metal in general, it's never just like gray. It always has different tones to it. Warm tones and cold tones, and then depending on the environment around it, you know, it will reflect certain things. So as with this one, I'll have blue here at the top, and then I'll glaze in some red on the sides because, you know, in theory it's reflecting the red armor here on the side. So I'll glaze in some red on the sides and then blue on the top. So I'm watering down the ink a lot because I just want a hint of blue there, and I'd rather work it in slowly instead of going with too much right away and having to fix the whole thing. I'm working it from the shadows towards the highlights, but also from the highlights towards the shadows as well. So I'm trying to make it blue like somewhere in the middle. It's hard to tell the difference at the moment, but like I said, it's better to do it slowly instead of doing too much right away and then having to fix it. Because like I said, you just want a hint of blue there. You don't want it to be blue. When I'm done, I'll try to show you. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I already can tell the difference, but it's a little bit harder to tell the difference on the camera. So I'll put it closer to the camera, and maybe you'll be able to see the difference between this one and that one after I'm done. So like I said, depending on the environment, you might use different colors. So for example, if, you know, in your imagination, this guy is like fighting somewhere in the forest or in the jungle, then you'd paint some green instead of blue. Or if he's like in the desert and you know, it's high noon, then you'd paint on some yellow ink instead of, you know, blue or green or whatever. You can do different colors too. So like, you know, for example, if if he's somewhere in the field, right? So the bottom of this part would be reflecting grass. So you'd have green here, and then, you know, the top part is reflecting the sky. So you'd have green. Sorry, you'd have blue ink here on top. So, you know, you can go crazy with it. So I'm gonna show you. I don't know if you'll be able to see. I think you can kind of tell in the camera. It's a little bit bluish. This side is kind of blue compared to that one. I'll take some pictures when I'm done with the miniature, so, and I'll post it on my Instagrams, so you'll be able to see all the parts and details if you'd like. So I'm gonna glaze in some reds now on the sides. I'm just gonna water down the ink. So I water it down a lot when it's to the point where it's runny like water. And then what I do is, here, I'll show you. I wipe the excess off on the wet spot on the paper towel. And then you can't even tell in the camera, but it's like barely leaving any spot. And when it's like that, I go in and glaze it in the spots where I think the reflection should be. Just gonna glaze it on the side here. I'll need some more. Again, the same thing. Just wipe off the excess. And then when there's very little left on the brush, go back in and I glaze it in. I need a little bit more. And then I'm gonna repaint the edge highlights because obviously after glazing blue and red, the edge highlights will get tinted as well. But I want them to stay, you know, close to white color. Just gonna move this out of the way so the camera works better. So I'm done with that side. That one, yeah, they probably won't be able to tell at all. It's hard to see. So I'm gonna do the same thing now. One sec. So I'm gonna do the same thing now, but on the inside part. Yeah, I'll add a little bit more. These are not ideal parts to show this technique, but it might be we might have better luck with these ones because there's more room to work there and the areas are just like flat. They're not too busy with details, so it'll be easier to see what I'm doing. Alright, so I'm done with that one. And I'm just gonna reestablish the edge highlights again, because I don't want them to be tinted. I'm not gonna worry about the ones on the sides, like right here, because you can't really see them anyway. Like that. Then on top. And the inside one. I will paint these ones because you can see them better. And they kind of really stand out. Like that. Now I'm gonna paint the brighter edge highlights with the mix of gray and white. And once again, I'm painting only where I have the bouncing lights. So at the bottom here, in the middle, and then up top here. And then I'll just paint them here as well. I'll add a little bit more white. So it's about 70% white and 30% gray now. And I'm just gonna paint little dots in the corners of these square guys. Just little tiny dots. Like that. If this area wasn't too busy, I would paint, some little scratches and whatnot, but there was barely any room for edge highlights, so there's definitely no room for any scratches. So now I'm gonna do the same thing for this one. I'm going to glaze in some blue ink here, and then red on the side, just identical to that one. And the reason why I'm using ink instead of regular paints is because it's very transparent And that is what I'm looking for. I need it to be transparent and just give it a little hint of color there. It is possible to do it with regular paint as well, but just easier to do with inks. So if you have inks, just use those. But if you don't have them, you can do the same thing with paints. You'll just have to be a little bit more careful in order not to make it look blue too much. So I'm just going back to the wet palette. I'm grabbing some more blue ink, and then going back to this part and glazing in some more. And then when I see that it's, you know, blue enough, I'll move on to the red. But so far it looks like I'll need more blue. And I keep mentioning it, but you really need to go slow with this, because I've done this mistake in the past where, you know, I was glazing it and I wasn't seeing much difference, so I just got impatient and I got too much blue paint on my brush and just went in, and I basically just ruined everything, so I had to repaint the whole part. Just make sure you go slow with it, and, you know, take your time and glaze your color in little by little, because it is just easier to add more paint than trying to fix the whole thing all over again. That's good. I'm gonna glaze red on the sides. There's very little room there, so, and it's pretty dark. The gray is pretty dark there, so it's hard to tell the difference. I'll do it one more. I'll do one more pass, and then I'll move on to the other side of this pipe or whatever that thing is. I'm just, so what I'm painting is this side, between the thruster and the pipe, but you probably won't be able to see me paint it, so, because it's a really awkward spot. I can kind of see it, I guess. Yeah, that's good. And now I'm gonna reestablish those edge highlights again. Because when you glaze your colors over the highlights go down in value, so they don't look as bright anymore. So you need to go in and bring them back up. They also tint a lot more because those are the brightest parts. So if you don't bring the highlights back up, they'll just look too blue or, you know, too red or whatever color you use. You don't want that. Okay. Now I'm gonna do 50-50 white and gray. And I'll highlight the bouncing lights again, so at the bottom, in the middle, also horizontal lines right here, and then up at the top. Like that. And now I'm just gonna paint the white dots in the corners of little squares. I'll be using 70% white and about 30% of a gray that I used before. So I'm just gonna do little dots right in the corners, right there, some here, a little bit for this guy too, and this guy right here. And that's it. That's those two parts done. Move it closer to the camera so you can take a better look. It's very busy, so it's hard to tell. Should get better results with the rest of the parts. I'm gonna paint. I'm going to paint those first, and then I think I'll paint these thrusters on the sides, just so we can get a better picture of what the backpack looks like with all the metal parts done. Going to paint this canister first, or I don't know if it's a canister. I'm not the Space Marine backpack engineer, so I have no idea what those parts are. I don't think anyone has any idea what those parts are, so I'll just make up my own names for them. So for this one, I'll just do one highlight instead of, you know, multiple bouncing highlights, because this part is too small. So I'll just do it in the middle, right there. So I'm leaving some dark gray here, and let me move it closer. So I'm leaving it dark here, and then here up top, and a highlight in the middle right there. I'm making this area somewhat large with my first tab, because every further step will be smaller and smaller. So I want to make sure I have enough area, you know, to paint on the inside. Because if you paint your next tab and then you paint over your previous tab, then it's kind of pointless. You won't get the same effect. Спасибо большое. Спасибо большое за совет и за отзыв и за комментарий. So next one, I'm just gonna be so for this step I use dark gray, and then I basically mix 50-50 black and this gray. And now for the step that I'll be doing, I'll be using just straight this color. not mixing it with anything. So I'll be painting even smaller area now. And I'm doing these motions here. So let me see if I can get camera to focus on the... So I'm just doing like little lines. But I'm doing them closer to each other, obviously. So I'm just doing like little strokes like that. Just to create a little bit of a, I guess brushed metal effect. So I'm just painting on little strokes like that. It also helps to blend it a little bit better. And once again, I'm trying not to paint over my previous step, but also at the same time, I'm trying to make that area large enough so I can fit another step inside of it. So I'm leaving just a tiny bit of the previous step on the outside. Let me get a... Just looking for like a piece of paper so I can show you, because it's hard to see on this little part. And I thought maybe I can show you an example on a piece of paper. So I'll just use this piece of paper here. I'll just quickly illustrate what I'm doing. So let's say my base color was black, which it wasn't, but I'll just use it for my example. So I painted black first. Then I'm mixing this black with my gray. About 50-50. And now I'm painting smaller area inside of it. I want this area to be as big as possible so I can fit even smaller area inside of it. But I also want to keep a little bit of that black on the outside. So when I'm done with that, I'm grabbing my gray and I'm painting even smaller area now. I'll use white just so you can see it better. So I'm painting even smaller area now. And again, I want this area to be as big as possible, but also not to cover previous area. So right now you can see all three layers. So that's the goal. And then you go, you know, as many layers as you want to, or as many layers as the size of the surface will allow you to. So now I'm gonna do 50-50 light gray and white. And I'm going to paint it inside this area. This will be my final highlight for this part, because I just can't fit anymore in there. Something like that. So now I'm gonna paint edge highlights again. Actually, before edge highlights, I'm going to paint in really dark shadows at the very edge here and on that side, just to give it more contrast. I'm using very thin paint because I don't want it to be I don't want it to be too dark. Paint it in like that, and then I'm gonna do the same thing here. Yeah, you can barely tell, but it makes a difference. So now I'm gonna do edge highlights. So this part, you can barely see it, but it has like this part in the middle. That goes across. Like that. Now I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm going to glaze in some blues. I'm not gonna bother with red because its part is too small. There's no point doing red. So I'm just gonna do blue. The same way, I'm just wiping off the excess. And I'm gonna glaze it from the shadows towards the highlight. And then also from the highlight towards the shadow. So like most of the paint is gonna stay in the middle between the highlight and the shadow. Because I want the highlight to stay, you know, almost white. But then I want to also be able to tell that it's a little bit bluish. So I want the color to stay where the midtone is. I'm going to move up in opacity little by little. Right now you can't really tell that there is blue, so I'm gonna add some more. Yeah, I think this step glazing should be enough. Because once again, I don't want it to look blue. I just want a hint of blue in there. Something like that. And now I'm just going to reestablish the edge highlight again. I'm using light gray. I'm gonna paint the edge highlight right here. And here as well. And then in the middle, where I have my brightest highlight, I'm going to use 70% white and 30% light gray. And I'm only painting in the general area of that highlight. So just like here, top in the middle. 1 and 2. I think we're getting there. Just gonna move the mic a little bit. Okay, and now I'm gonna paint these 3 lines. I'm going the... yeah, I'm gonna be painting it kind of the same way as these guys here. So I'll have 3 highlights. So I'll have bouncing light. I'll have the brightest highlight right here in this area. And then slightly less bright highlight here. And then slightly less bright highlight over here. So again, I'll show it on the picture here. Again, I'm not like physics expert or anything like that, but the general idea for shapes like that, for shapes like this, I'll use yellow to represent the light. Your light hits the surface. That's where it will be the brightest. Then it bounces, hits the surface again, and bounces this way too. Hits the surface again. It's not always exactly the same distance, so it's not like, you know, this distance will equal this distance. It might be different distances, but where the light hits the surface first, that's where the light will be the brightest. So this highlight should go all the way to, you know, let's say white, and this highlight and that highlight will be, you know, a mix of gray and white. You know, and if there's more bounces, then it gets darker and darker and darker, so that your highlights are darker, darker, and darker. So these two highlights shouldn't be as bright as your main highlight. That's general idea. But it's just because I have enough room to do that. So for this part, I use only one highlight because there's not enough room to do multiple bouncing highlights. So it all depends on the, you know, surface that you're working with, and also whatever you think will look better. Because you don't have to follow, you know, realistic physics completely. I feel like the rule of cool is more important than physics. So I'm gonna sketch the main highlight right here. Then secondary highlight here. And that's also another thing. For your secondary highlights, they also go down in size as well as brightness. And I'm gonna paint the third bounce right here. I'm going to move this one a little bit further up. And then I'm going to cover it up here just so I have more room to work with for this highlight. So I'm going to cover it up. And I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger so I can fit more steps in there. Like that. Now I'm using straight up. Now I'm just using light gray. Painting a little bit of a smaller area this time. Making sure that I still have the darker gray left on the outside. I'm doing the same thing for all three highlights. Like that. And I'm using the same motions. So I'm just doing little strokes like that to simulate, you know, brushed metal. Because, you know, it's not like... I mean, it could be a super smooth metal surface. But it's not what I'm going for. And then there's another highlight right here. It's hard to see the shadow area between the, my main highlight and my bottom highlight here, so I'm just gonna reestablish it. Just like that. This kind of reads like the same highlight, and that's not what I want. It's like this. Okay, I think that's it for the bouncing highlights, but then for my main highlight, I'm going to do the 50% light gray, 50% white. I'm gonna push it a little bit further in value. Oops, I got a little bit of paint on the thing here. So I'll just wipe it off with clean brush. Just dip it into the water, wipe the excess off on your paper towel, and then just can easily wipe it off. Make sure you don't wipe too much paint, because you can wipe the paint underneath as well. There's a little bit left, but I'll be painting edge highlights here on this part anyway, so I'll cover it up. And then I'm gonna do one extra step for the main highlight. I'm gonna do, once again, 70% white, 30% light gray. I'll make it really, really tiny. It's basically just dots. Like that. Now I'll try to paint edge highlights on those parts. It's gonna be tough because they're really, really thin. So they have to be super crisp, because I don't want to cover what I've just painted on the inside. So that those highlights have to be really, really thin. I'm gonna start with light gray first. I'm just gonna drag my brush on the side, just the very tip of the brush. Like that. It's great. Not just that the part is super thin, but the location is very tricky to get to. Wow. Just super concentrated on doing this, so bear with me. Can't really do much commentary at the moment. Something like that. Now I have to do the same thing for two other ones. Just gently drag the tip of the brush against the edge. It is always better to do too little than too much. As usual with things like that, it is easier to add more than to fix it if you have too much there. It'll be a lot of flipping it back and forth, so apologize for it ahead of time. Now the same thing for the last one. Alright, now I'm gonna do the 70% white, 30% light gray, and I'm only going to paint it where I have the bouncing light. So a little bit here, here, here. Same thing where I have the main highlight. It's the trickiest part to get it under this halo. And then this highlight right there. All right, so now, oh, by the way, the way I'm doing edge highlights, I know some people were here yesterday and I explained it yesterday as well, but for those who weren't here yesterday, the way I'm painting edge highlights, I mean, it's a pretty common technique, but some people don't know. Like, I didn't know when I just started painting and I was doing it the hard way. So when I didn't know how to do it properly, I was just like painting on my edge highlights, just basically tracing the edge, trying to paint it on. But there's an easier way to paint a lot sharper edge highlights. So you have the edge and you just drag your brush along the edge. You don't even have to do anything, just put it against the edge and gently drag it along, and that's it. So you won't have any, you know, squiggly lines or anything like that, any mistakes. I mean, you might have mistakes, but this way is a lot easier than just trying to trace the edge normally with your brush. So, you know, depending on how big the area is and how big the edge is, you know, you might drag it just, you know, closer to this part or just the tip of the brush. That's what I was doing for this part. I was using just the tip of the brush, but yeah. This way is a lot easier and you get a lot better results. So I'm just gonna get a sip of water.
That sugar sweet, you got what I need. Sipping on the potion, all that good emotion, just my kind of heat.
All right, let's continue. So I'll have to do the same thing here as I did for this part, and those parts I'll have to glaze in. I'm going to glaze in blue here up top. But then for this part, I'm going to glaze in red because I want to simulate the reflection of his helmet, red helmet here. And it's really close to those metal parts, so I would imagine it would reflect his helmet there. So I'm just doing blue up top and red up down here. Using exactly the same technique and all the same colors. So I'm just using the blue ink that I was using before. Just swiping excess on the paper towel and little by little bring up the opacity of the blue. So I'm trying to glaze it from the shadows towards the highlights and then from the highlights towards the shadows. So I'm trying to have it somewhere in the mid-tone area, maybe a little bit closer to the highlight. But I don't want to tint the highlight completely. And again, it'll be hard to see at first. And like, I'm not talking about right now on the camera, but when you do it on your own, when you paint your own miniatures, when you glaze things, at first you can't tell the difference at all. Kind of looks like you're doing nothing. But when you wipe your brush on a paper towel, if there is a trace on a paper towel, then trust me, you're not doing nothing. Like, you're actually pushing the opacity a little bit. It's just hard to see for your eye. Just keep doing the same thing, grabbing some more paint and like coming back and glazing it more and more, and then you'll start seeing the difference. And as usual, it is a lot easier to just add some more if you need to than trying to fix your miniature after you put too much paint. Because you can add, but you can't take away the paint. I mean, you could take away, but everything at once. So everything that was painted there before, you'll have to wipe it off or strip it away. Or repaint the whole thing. And nobody wants that. Just gonna add a little bit more blue, because I feel like it's not blue enough. And technically you could, I guess, just mix in blue with your gray and just, you know, use bluish gray. But with glazes, you kind of have more control, because like in some parts you can have a little bit of blue, and then in other parts you can just have gray or whatever color you're using. So it gives you more control of, like, maybe in some excuse me, in some places you might want it to be a little bit more saturated or a little bit more opaque, and then in some areas you want it slightly less opaque. So you just have more control with that. So I feel like it's blue enough. Now I'm going to glaze in red ink on this part. So again, I'm trying to glaze it into the midtones. So I'm moving from the highlight towards the shadow, and then from the shadow towards the highlight, and I'm meeting in the middle. I'll need to add a little bit more. Just gonna take a closer look because it's hard to tell from the distance. I think I'll add a little bit more red. Just a tiny bit. I don't want it to be too red. I'm not trying to paint red metal. I'm trying to paint, you know, gray silverish metal with reflections. Yeah, that should be enough. So now I'll have to, I know those edge highlights were super tricky to paint, but I'll have to reestablish them again, so. Carefully. It's a little bit too much, but that's okay. This top part is a lot easier. I'm gonna do this real quick. Like that. And this one as well. And on this side. One of the many reasons why I love these handles is because it's just a magnet here. So you can pop it on and off, and then it just spins. So like whenever I need to paint it, you know, on the other side, I just spin it. I don't have to move the handle or whatever. It just spins in place. I freaking love it. Now I'm just gonna do the 70% white and 30% light gray again to reestablish the edge highlights in those spots where I have bouncing light. So right here, here, here. Just turn it around. Do it on the other side. And then here as well. Boom, boom, boom. And then this here too. So we have highlights there. And under the halo. Under the halo is the trickiest part. It's hard to get the brush there. Gotta work with what we have. Here. I think that's good. That's what we have so far. So you might be wondering like, oh, well, what was the point of painting those edge highlights twice? They're so tricky to paint to begin with, and you did it twice. Well, because, like I mentioned earlier, until you paint your edge highlights on your non-metallic metal, you can't really tell if it looks good or not. Or like, it will look bad until you paint them. So no matter, like, you might have perfect non-metallic metal, but just because you didn't paint your edge highlights, it will look off, and you'll be like, oh, what the heck is wrong with it? I don't know what the heck is wrong with it. And you'll just spend hours and hours fixing it. And the only problem that was, like, the only problem that you had is you had to paint your edge highlights. So throughout the whole process of painting non-metallic metal, you want to, you know, paint, you want to, I think the best way to do it is to sketch your highlights and then paint your edge highlights and then work from there. And then just keep painting your edge highlights whenever you cover them, just to have the whole picture of your non-metallic metal part. But yeah, that was the reason why I had to paint them twice. So next, I think we'll paint those guys. So if you're trying to paint non-metallic metal and it's not looking good, make sure you paint your edge highlights, because that might be the reason why it doesn't look right. So I'm doing 70% gray and 30% black right now. I'm going to have my highlights. I'm thinking here. Yeah, I think I'll have my highlights right here. Same thing on the other one. Then I'll have one. I'll have one here. Yeah, I'll just have one here. And then one there. And the rest of this, I don't know, exhaust pipe or whatever the heck that is covered by the thruster, so I'm not gonna bother painting anything there. I'll do the same thing with this guy. Now I'm gonna do just the light gray color. Paint the light reflection here. Like that, and the same thing on this one. So the one on top will be my main light, and then the one at the bottom will be the bouncing light, so it won't be as bright. Like that. So that's it for the bottom one. I'm not gonna bring it any more up in value. But for the top one, I'll do 50% white, 50% light gray. It's not going to be as bright as the ones on top because it's further from the light, so it shouldn't be as bright. Because generally, the closer you are to the top of the miniature, the brighter the things are. So for example, when I'll be painting this flag, my final highlight at where the brightest point will be, you know, light gray. I'm not going to mix any more white in there. So for the little ones like that, you know how I mentioned I'm doing strokes. So when the area is really small, you can't really do any, brush strokes. I'm just kind of like tapping the side of my brush like this. And it kind of looks like brush strokes, but it's just like stippling basically. So that's it for these guys. Well, I mean, I'm not done with them completely yet, but for the highlights, that's it for them. So I don't know if you can tell. Like, it kind of looks good, but a little bit off. It's because I don't have edge highlights. And once I paint the edge highlights, it'll look a lot different and it will look a lot better too. I'll do edge highlights with my light gray. I'm just going to paint all the edges. It's a little bit tricky. Some details are a little bit hard to tell from the rest from each other. In some areas you won't be able to do the technique that I showed you where you drag the edge of your brush. So you kind of have to paint the edge highlights on the usual way. I'm hitting the microphone with my brush a little bit. Hopefully it's not too loud for you guys. That. Just gonna do the same thing for the other one. So I'm really concentrated on doing these edge highlights, so in moments like that I might not be commenting too much because I'm basically holding my breath. the hard to get places, I'm not worried about them too much, because most of the time if you can't get there with the brush, then most likely people can't see it. And like, this is not a display, I mean it's somewhat of a display quality miniature, but like it's not going to be competition, so no one's gonna grab it and look at it like that, you know what I mean? Like a person that I'm painting it for is going to use it for gaming, so most of the time he'll be looking at it like this or from the top. I mean, I'm still trying to paint it, you know, in all the places, but like at that point I have more chances of messing up everything around it than, you know, make it look nicer. So I'll show you now with the edge highlights. First of all, it's not, the part looks different now because it's not just blended into into one gray piece. You can actually tell different parts of those exhausts now, and it looks more like metal now. I think, in my opinion, it does look like metal. It's close enough. Just gotta add some more blue ink to the wet palette. Blue, and we're gonna do some red there as well. Also, let me know if you want to see the wet palette better, because whenever I watch other people paint, I'm not really worried too much about what kind of paints they're using or like how they're mixing them, because I can just figure it out on my own. But you know, it's different for other people, so you let me know if you want to see the exact mixed colors that I have. One sec. Have this wire in the way. Alright, it's better now. So I'm going to glaze blue here and here as well, and then I'm going to glaze in red on the outside right there, and right there as well. Just gonna start with blue. Here's the consistency, by the way, of dilution. It's just like tinted water, and then I just wipe it off on the paper towel until there's almost no more trace of paint, and then I glaze it away from the highlight and then away from the shadow, and then I just move them towards each other and meet somewhere in the middle, somewhere in the area of the mid-tone, maybe a little bit closer to the highlight. But once again, I don't want to paint over the highlight. I want it to stay, you know, white-ish. So you just want to tint the mid-tone and shadow. Like that. I don't know, up here. Technically, this part probably would be reflecting the red thruster up here, but like I said, sometimes you just go for the rule of cool instead of realistic physics. And that's what I'm gonna do here. I'm not gonna worry too much about being super realistic. After all, I'm painting a freaking super soldier that has multiple hearts and lungs. So I wouldn't worry too much about realism. Gonna do the same thing for this exhaust as well. Actually, those might not be sorry, those might not be exhaust pipes, those more be like additional like thrusters for making turns and whatnot. Who knows? Nobody knows. Oh, I'm actually, maybe the person who designed it knows. But I'm not that person, so I'm just gonna guess. Or make up my own stuff. Okay, now we're gonna glaze red under the thrusters here. To be honest, you won't be able to see that anyway, but oh well. I know it's there. I know that it should be. I should glaze in red there, so I'll do it. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep at night, knowing that I didn't glaze red where it's supposed to be. It's a little bit too much red. Let's take it off. It's hard to tell, but yeah, it has a hint of red. That's good enough. Because like I said, you can't really see that part there anyway, and like I'm probably the first and last person who will see it on the part under the thruster anyway, so no point of trying too hard. I'm just gonna reestablish the edge highlights again. There's barely any edge on these exhaust pipes or whatever they are, so that's why I have to paint it on instead of just dragging my brush against the edge. Because there is no edge, so there's nothing to drag my brush against. Something like that. And then I'm just gonna do 50-50 light gray and white. Just mix it up. I'm going to just highlight the edges where I have the light. So like right here. And the same thing here. Just like that. And then the highlight underneath. Here. 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 Same for this exhaust. Yeah, something like that. So this is what we have so far. So I'm just gonna paint those little guys and it's pretty much the backpack done. These guys will be basically just black, and I'll do some black weathering around the thrusters. So I'm not gonna paint those guys. I'm not gonna make them non-metallic metal. It'll be just like covered in black sod. So with these guys, they're really tiny, so I'm thinking I might just do the edge highlights for them and not bother. Yeah, I might do a little bit of I'm going to pedal I'm going to paint a little bit of non-metallic metal here and here as well, because it's a little bit of a larger surface and I can actually do something there. But for the rest of them, I'm thinking I'll just do edge highlights. Yeah, later, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Appreciate you stopping by. So I'm thinking I'll do 50-50, or sorry, 70% light gray, 30% black. And I'm just going to, I don't even know if you'll be able to see it on the camera, but just gonna paint the bottom of this area. That's pretty much it. There's not much I can do. It's really tiny. Just going to paint edge highlight now. I'll do light gray. Like that. Just gonna do the same thing here. For these ones, I actually could have just glazed in blue first, but it's okay. I already did the edge highlight anyway. I'll have to redo it again. That's okay. I'm thinking I'll paint a little bit of that 70% light gray, 30% black. Excuse me, right here as well. Like that. Might as well paint some here and here as well. Just to make it a little bit more interesting. Just not, I don't want it to be like just flat gray. I'm gonna glaze in some blue. I'm not gonna worry about red too much. I'm gonna go super realistic with that thing. Those are so small you won't be able to tell. Just gonna glaze in blue real quick. little bit too much blue. I'll wipe it off. Like that. I'll wipe it off a little bit more. Same thing on this side. I'm painting right here. Just the angle is weird for the camera. Right there. Just gonna highlight it as well. So, this is what it looks like so far. I think it looks pretty cool. Now just going to paint those parts and those little guys there. And then we'll see how much time we have, and maybe we'll have enough time to paint the rest of the metal parts, but I don't know. The leg is pretty big. I don't know if we'll have time to paint it today. But we might have time to paint this chest piece right there. We'll see. I might finish painting those gold parts as well. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. So these guys, so they're not like, it kind of looks like it's an, you know, like arch shape. Like, kind of looks like it goes like this, but actually it doesn't. It's like angular. So like it's straight line, straight line, straight line. And those are different. I'll actually show you, because why not? So for the flat panels, and once again, I'm not an expert in painting non-metallic metal. It's just I'm sharing the knowledge that I have. I'm not saying that that's the only way, that's the only right way to do it. But with flat panels like that, usually you have, you know, dark shadow on one side, and then highlight on the opposite side. You know, and then you have mid-tone in the middle, so like gray. So in my case, I also have another panel connected to it that goes like this, right? So in this case, once again, you'll have shadow here, and then light none there, you know, and then mid-tone in the middle. So normally you don't paint when you have two flat panels connecting to each other, you don't want your light on the same side. So you don't want to have light on this panel and then light on this panel up top here. You want it to be the opposite. So if you have light here, you have shadow on this panel, or if you have shadow, you know, on this panel, then you have light on this panel. And so that's how it's different from the curved shape. So because if I had a curved shape instead of those panels, I would just have light right here, and then, you know, maybe I would have it bouncing this way and that way. So I would have, you know, the brightest highlight here, and then a little bit darker highlight here and here. But it's hard to tell because those little panels are, as I said, they're little. So it almost looks like it's a curved shape, but it's not. So I just don't know if I want to paint them as a curved shape or if I want to paint them as the flat panels. I think I'll paint them as flat panels just because it's a little bit more interesting. So I'm gonna do 70% light gray, 30% black. And I'm gonna have my highlight towards this side. So that means that on this panel, because it's a different panel now, I'll have highlight here at the bottom, and then I'll have shadow connecting to this panel. And they don't have to be like, you know, even. You can have a little bit more highlight on this end and then less highlight on this end. You know, I can paint them a little bit on an angle. And then the same thing with this panel. I'll have highlight at the bottom. Also, I don't know why my voice keeps cracking. Probably because I need more water, but I ran out of water. Might have to go downstairs and get some more. But anyway, and then same thing with this panel. Highlight at the bottom. And then on this side, same thing. At the bottom and at the bottom. It will all make a lot more sense once I do the edge highlights. So I'm gonna use light gray for my next step. And I'm painting smaller area now. But I'm leaving my previous step visible, so like just a tiny bit. I'm not covering it up all the way, but I'm also not leaving too much. Just enough for my next highlight. Like that. Then this side as well. Something like this. And then for these guys up top, I'll do one more step. Because I have enough room for that, but for these ones down here, I'm not gonna do another one because there's just not enough room for that. But I will paint darker shadows there to give it more contrast. So for the next one, for the next highlight, I use 50% white, 50% light gray. Yeah, I'll paint this one. Oh, it's a little bit too much. X. That's okay. A little bit here. A little bit right here as well. And now I'm gonna paint just a little bit darker shadows. So the mix that I had For my base coat, I just added a little bit more black to it. I'm gonna paint darker shadows here up top, as well as right here, top as well, here, here, just basically on the opposite side of the highlights. Something like that. So kind of looks weird at the moment, but watch me do edge highlights and it'll make a lot more sense. So I'm using light gray. Again, I'm just dragging the tip of my brush along the edge. Like this, and we're not done yet. My bad. Just gonna highlight this edge as well, because there's a gap between the red part and the metal part, so I'm going to highlight it as well. Apologies if I forget to talk and make commentary when I'm edge highlighting, because like I said, I forget most of the times when I do that. I don't forget to breathe, so it's definitely a lot more complicated to talk. Like this. And now I'm going to edge highlight the edges of the panels. So we have, sorry, I just need to take a closer look. Okay, so we have one edge here, right there, then another one like somewhere around here, right there, oops, my bad, the microphone a little bit. So camera, hello. So there's another edge right here. Need a little bit more water. And another edge right there. One here as well. This is what it looks like with edge highlighting. Just gonna do the edge highlighting on the inside of the thruster. Sorry, there's just not enough water for the paint and just not floating off the brush. You definitely want to get the consistency right for the edge highlighting. You don't want it to be too thick, but you also don't want it to be too watery. Can't really tell you the ratio because, like I mentioned on the previous stream, you know, different paints have different consistencies, so your paints might be different from mine, and even paints from the same brand sometimes have different consistencies, even from the same range. So like, let's say if you have Vallejo game color range, you know, one of your paints might be different from the other paint in the same range. So there's no like perfect consistency for every paint. It's just gotta try it out on your own. I'm not exactly happy with how it looks like. I think I'll change it up a little bit. Just gonna go in with my 70% light gray, 30% black again. Just gonna make the highlight area a little bit larger. Like that. I feel like that's way better. Just gonna do the same thing over here. Sorry, I moved it out of the frame again. Yep, like that. Now I'm just gonna do the secondary highlight, which is just light gray. Once again, I'm trying to do little tiny lines just to get like texture, just so it doesn't look like just flat smooth metal. Like that. And I'm gonna do 50% light gray, 50% white, just for the panels at the top. Just a little tiny bit right there. Like that. I'm also going to highlight. I'm using the same mix of 50% white, 50% gray. And I'm just gonna highlight in the general area of where the light hits the panel. So right there. And then as well, and the same thing on the for the horizontal edges. I guess they're not really horizontal, but the angle that I was holding it, it was horizontal. Like that. I feel like that's much better now. I'm going to glaze in some blue, same way I did for the rest of the parts. I'm sorry, my voice keeps cracking more and more because I'm super thirsty and I have no more water left. I'll glaze it in and I'll have to go get some water because I won't be able to talk soon. So, same thing, just glazing away from the highlight towards the shadow and then back from the shadow towards the highlight. Because I want to tint you know, the reason why I'm doing it back and forth, I kind of want to tint the highlight just a tiny bit, but also I want to tint the shadow. So when you drag your brush over the area, it tints it just a tiny bit. And then when you stop your brush in the area of the mid-tone, it leaves all the excess paint there. So that's where you'll get the most opacity for your glaze. So that is exactly what I'm going for. I'm looking for a little bit of a tint on the highlight and a little bit of a tint on the shadow. But then the most opacity I want on my mid-tone. So that's why I stopped my brush. Actually, I did it perfectly on my first pass, so I won't have to go back with the glaze. Now I'm gonna glaze some here on the face of the thruster for the air intake, I guess. Thrust the air from the other side, it takes air on this side. Guess you could say your mouth and your nose are air intakes and your S is a thruster. Don't mind me. Alright, I think that looks great. Gonna paint the same thing for this side. And then we're just gonna paint these little parts as well. But before that, I'm gonna go get some water because my throat is killing me. I'll be right back. And I'm back with some water. Let's continue on. Alright, so next we're gonna paint this part. Actually, I'll paint these little guys first. It's not gonna take that much time. I'm just gonna do 70% light gray, 30% black. And I'm just gonna quickly highlight it right there. And then right here. And then just light gray. Just a little tiny dots right there and right here. That's pretty much it. Just gonna glaze some blue over. Just a little bit more. Then I'm just gonna edge highlight it with light gray. The casting on this part is really weird, so like there's basically no edges there, so I'm just freehanding the edges. Just like that. And then like this. Then the same thing for this guy. So took me like 5 seconds. It looks good enough. Now we're gonna do this side. So I'm just gonna do it exactly the same way, but mirrored from this guy. So, you know, I had highlights here on this side, so that means I'll have highlights on that side now. Just mirrored. Oh, my bad. I'm going to paint it a little bit larger this time, so I don't have to fix it later, just how I did with that one. Another panel right here. Then another one right here. I think this is one panel. I'll just paint it right here. Just like that. Now I'm gonna do just like Ray. Oh, I forgot about panel here. That's alright. That's not a big deal. Just gonna paint it real quick. Just like that. That's not gonna get away from us. Just like that. Just like that. And then for the top panels, I'm thinking this one, that one, and this one as well. I'll add one more extra step in value, and I'll do like gray and white again, 1-to-1 ratio. I'm just gonna do a little extra highlight right here. Another one. Sorry. Another one right there. And another one right over here. That's it. I'm going to, because like I did identical thing to what I have here, so I know what is gonna like how it's gonna look like at the end. So I'm not gonna bother doing edge highlights right now. I'll just do the glazing first right away, and then I'll do edge highlights so I don't have to do them twice. Like that. Just gonna do some quick glazing. One path should be enough. One pass, sorry. Got plenty of blue ink on my brush, so I don't think I'll have to do another one. Yeah, it's looking good. Yeah, I'll do one more. That's just missing a little bit of blue. So I'll just add some more real quick. Just like that. I'm just gonna glaze some blue into these areas as well. They're pretty dark gray, you can really tell, but your eye can't tell, but your brain can, or like your eye can see it. It just you can't really see it. You know what I mean? Then I'm just gonna do edge highlight with the just light gray. I'm gonna do the outside edge now. Like that. No, just gotta do this part there, but this sword is in the way. It's gonna be a little bit tricky. This sword is really getting in the way. Oops. Didn't break anything today. No, I don't think so. Just trying to edge highlight the inside here. It won't be perfect, but that's the best the best that I can do with that sword in the way. Can't really see it anyway. Something like that. Okay, just 1 second. Sorry, I just had to answer the text message. Just gonna paint this part real quick. 70% light gray, 30% black. Just gonna highlight it in the middle. Just like that. Same thing for this one. Now I'll use, sorry, my bad. And I'm just gonna use light gray. Gonna highlight it right in the middle. Then a little bit here. That's pretty much it. I'm just gonna oh no, actually, no. Gonna glaze in blue first. And then I'm just gonna do the edge highlight, and that's it for those little guys. With little parts like that, you don't have to bother too much, to be honest. With small parts like that, a little goes a long way. Like that. Попался. Тебя никуда не денешься. And then I'm just gonna edge highlight it with light gray real quick. Once again, there's no edges really, because the casting is not the greatest, to be honest. So I just kind of have to freehand it, those edges. And the same thing for this little thing, this little guy. Like that. So I'm pretty sure that's it for the backpack. Well, for the silver metal parts at least. This is what it looks like. Now I'm just gonna Спасибо, сладкий. Now I'm just gonna paint this chest piece, and I think that'll be it for today. Because the lag will take just too much time to paint on stream. I mean, I don't mind painting on stream, but it'll take another like hour probably. Actually, we'll see. I'll paint the chest piece first, and then we'll see how it goes. So for the chest piece, I'll do the main highlight. I think I'll just do one highlight. I'll do one big highlight here in the middle. I'm not gonna do bouncing highlights. I'll just do one highlight here in the middle, and then, you know, shadows towards the edges. So I'll just start the same way I started all of the other ones. So I'll just start with 70% light gray and then 30% black. I'll just sketch my main light. I'm going to treat this surface as a cylinder, because technically it's just like little, very little tiny panels, but they're so tiny that there's no point of, you know, there's no point to treat them as like separate pieces. Just like I'll just treat them as one big cylinder. Yikes. Oh yeah, I completely forgot his hands are metal too. So I'll have to paint those. Yeah, so we're definitely not painting all the metal parts today. Then for the next one, I'll just use straight light gray. Previous layer is still wet, so a little bit of wet blending. Wet blending is great technique for non-metallic metal. You can get really, sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. You can get really smooth transitions with wet blending. It's very simple too. But this miniature is so small that I'm not really worried about smooth transitions too much. The next one I'll do 50-50 light gray and white. Just gonna move it a little bit. Paint a smaller area closer to the middle. This is a little bit of a larger area, so I can fit a lot more, stabs and value than I could with the rest of the parts. Also, I got a little bit of white on the tip of his beak. Try to take it off as much as I can. Just paint some red there. Like that. And then I'll do 70% white, 30% light gray, and paint even smaller area. And then I'll do just white right in the middle here on the skull. Like this. I'm just gonna wait for it to dry a little bit and then I'll glaze in some blues in there. Actually, I'll hair dry it just so it takes less time. I'm gonna mute the mic real quick. Alright, so I'm just gonna glaze in some blues. And once again, I'll work away from the light and towards the shadows, and then from the shadows towards the light. Just keep it in the mid tones. And same thing on this side. Technically, I could probably do red here instead of blue because he has his hand here, so it would reflect his arm, but I don't know if I want to bother with that. I think I will, because why not? Yeah, I'll glaze in some red in that area. It's a little bit too much red. I'll do a little bit more. Like that. Just gonna hair dry it again. Alright, and I'm gonna edge highlight it. And because this chest piece is made of like multiple little pieces, I'm going to try and separate them with my edge highlights. So I'll just start with light gray. I'll do the main edges first, so I'll do the one up top and then one at the bottom. A little bit tricky to get to them, so I'm being extra careful because I don't want the paint in places where it doesn't belong. Like that, and now at the bottom. Now I'm gonna do the same thing but on this side. Man, that one's really awkward because of the arm with the sword. Yikes. Strict as heck. Something like that. Now I'm just gonna separate those little panels. It's hard to see them, so I'm just gonna freehand them. Like that. Then I'm just gonna do 70% white and then 30% light gray. And I'm going to edge highlight just this main area with the main light. Here at the top. And then at the bottom as well. And this guy here. Gonna separate the panels again. Man, I got some paint on his nose again. Gotta take it off real quick. Come on. Just gonna cover it up. Like that. Just want to separate that chest piece a little bit more, so I'm gonna use mostly black, probably about, I don't know, 70 to 80% black, and the rest light gray. Actually, probably even like closer to 80 and 90% black. And I'm just gonna paint a line between the chest piece and, you know, his chest. Just to separate it a little bit more. Like that. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing for he has like the skull in the middle. So I'm gonna paint a little tiny line around his skull. And I'm gonna do the same for his panels, just so the panels kind of stand out better. like that. So I'm gonna base coat his hands as well, because those are supposed to be metal, and I completely forgot about that. I think we ran out of music. I'm gonna play something in a bit. Just gonna base coat it really quick. So in the reference picture, this part is supposed to be red, so I'll keep it red. On the inside is the trickiest part. Like that, and now the other one too. Just gonna play some music real quick. Okay, we're gonna fall asleep with this music. Oh shoot. There we go. Gotta fix the paints really quick. Alright. So I'm just gonna base coat the other hand real quick. Like that. I'm going to finish up his sword here. Just gonna use some ivory for the final highlights. Like that. Just little tiny dots. And here on top. And then a little dot on this plum or whatever that is. And identical on this side. Like that. Just gonna do it real quick. Oh, actually, sorry, forgot. Got a little dot on the here. Like that. Just gonna do quick edge highlights as well. Gonna do 50-50 ice yellow and ivory for that. And then there's a little jam here in the middle. So I'm gonna paint it differently, obviously. I'm going to paint it as red jam. Just gonna separate the little feathers. And that's it for the sword. Well, that's not it for the sword, but for this part. And yeah. Actually, I'm gonna paint this little skull here. It's not gonna take too much time. It's gonna take like 5 seconds. Just so the backpack is completely finished. Well, once again, it's not completely finished, but all the non-metallic metal parts will be finished. Like that. So this is what we have so far. I think that's it for today. I don't know if I'll finish this guy completely on stream, because these streams are pretty exhausting, to be honest. I might finish this guy behind the camera, but I will do some streams definitely next week. We'll see. I'll keep you guys posted on Instagram. Thank you for hopping in and watching, and yeah, keep an eye on my Instagram and hopefully see you on future streams. Again, thank you so much.